Uh, yeah, it's only scheduled for 1 hour, so you should be fine there. Hello, how's everyone doing?
Hello, John. You come nice and clear. We're just kind of
Okay.
waiting for people to settle in and stuff. So, yeah,
Perfect.
nice.
I got about 5 different links for this. So I just had to resend them to Louise and Earl.
There you go. Cool. Sounds good. And yeah, Dave will probably take over in a few minutes and will coordinate for us.
Yeah. Oh, I'll to turn my camera off. It's on video. Oh yeah.
Hi, and welcome to our wildlife cameras and audio recorders with the land monitoring webinar today. We are so excited to take time that you've taken time out of your busy day to join us here today. I'm your host for today, Dave. And before we go any further, I just want to introduce one of our speakers, John McDonald, and we're going to find out if Louise Bolio, Knowledge Keeper, will be able to lead us off with an opening prayer. Okay, well, I'll check in with John in a little bit and see if Louise is able to start us off with a prayer, but maybe I'll just get going here right now. So today is Red Dress Day, also known as the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit People. It is a day to honor and remember the countless Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit individuals who have been murdered, gone missing, or experienced violence. They are in our thoughts today. I want to acknowledge that individuals from this webinar are joining us from far and wide. I'd like to invite everyone to reflect on their own locations, traditional territories, and histories of the land where you are currently located. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation, including those parts that were historically shared with the Katsi and other Coast Salish peoples. I'd like to thank the Coquitlam, Katsi, and other Coast Salish people who continue to live on these lands and care for them, along with the waters and all that is above and below. My name is Dave Evans, and I work for the Alberta Biodiversity Monitoring Institute, hoping to support Indigenous-led monitoring programs, and I'll be the host for today. Now, you may be asking why someone from BC who works in Alberta is involved with all of this. So I've been experienced working with environmental sensors on the land for the past 10 years, monitoring wildlife and biodiversity. I've been working closely with the planners of this webinar and the other members of our advisory group to develop training materials for using these sensors that we're going to talk about here today. Before we get things started, we get to hear from our incredible speakers. I just want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items. So today's presentation will actually be recorded. So if you're interested in viewing this recording or sharing it with others, it will be posted to our Aurora Research Institute's YouTube channel. Everyone's microphones have been muted and videos turned off. We are so excited to welcome everyone joining us today in this virtual circle, and would like to especially thank any elders or youth that are joining us today. If you are willing, please introduce yourself in the chat. Please feel free to share your name and community or group. That will give all of us a sense of who is in our virtual circle. We appreciate that a lot of the work relies on knowledge shared by elders. If anyone has joined us today with elders or knowledge keepers, we would like to acknowledge their presence and thank them for joining us with a small gift. So please get in touch with Claudia Haas from Laurier University at the email address that we'll post in the chat. And there will be more information about this at the end of the webinar as well. After the presentation today from our speakers, we'll have the chance to answer some questions. If you do have questions at any time, please feel free to add them into the Q&A section in Zoom. We'll have some of our collaborators keeping an eye on the questions coming in. We realize that we may not be able to get to all questions during this hour and a half, but our speakers and panelists have agreed to stay on this link for an additional half hour to address any other questions. So I'll just ask John if Louise is here and is able to start us off with an opening prayer as well.
Sorry, I'm not sure if Louise is able to join the right link. But I'll give a little background about Louise. She comes from a long line of history in the local area of Fort Smith. Her family and ancestors helped build and pave the way for this town, and infrastructure, roads, and she has a lot of background here. She's born and raised in the area, and she has an incredible background. She was actually the first female force fighter crew leader ever. She was also the first fire boss ever, and she was also a sergeant for the Canadian Rangers, first female sergeant, where she led 42 members. She's a land user, trapper, hunter, fisher, and she has a wealth of knowledge for being on the land and is very well respected in this area and by many people. She's also being re-elected as a town councillor multiple times and as a Métis councillor multiple times. a mother of three, and very proud to know her and introduce her. And hopefully you're online, Louise, and you can give us an opening prayer.
Well, hopefully Louise is able to join us here soon and introduce herself, and we can have an opening prayer at this point. But I might just continue on for the time being. But Louise, we're hoping you can join us here soon. Thank you so much, John.
No problem.
So, what is our webinar here today? What's it all about? As many of you already know, remote cameras and sound recorders are examples of environmental sensors that can be used to monitor wildlife. These sensors are user-friendly tools for collecting long-term information on multiple species at a time. However, training is required for sensors to be used consistently for monitoring our environment and to allow comparisons among different locations. To meet a growing community interest in environmental sensors, a comprehensive and easily accessible training program is now being offered. So a group of experienced environmental sensor users have come together to develop training materials with the goal to provide a training program for interested communities. The training was developed so it could be taught flexibly as a combination of in-person and remote learning, depending on resources, availability of instructors, and the trainee locations. So now with the training modules compiled, we would like to hear from you if this would be something you'd be interested in. Is this training of interest to you? And so on our screen, we have all of our different advisory group members. So today we're going to hear from Fort Smith Métis Council, Sambake First Nation, but as you can see, there's many other Indigenous governments and organizations that are doing this kind of work as well. So today's agenda, we're going to begin with a quick overview of environmental sensors. I promise to try to keep it brief. Then the true stars of the show, Jessica Jumbo and John McDonald, will present about their respective experiences conducting with the land monitoring using wildlife and sound recorders. Following this, our speakers and panel will answer as many questions as possible in this short amount of time we have here together today. And if we can't get to all of them, we'll do our best to answer them after the webinar as well. So, what are environmental sensors? Remote cameras and sound recorders are examples of environmental sensors that can be used to remotely monitor wildlife. Sensors are non-invasive new tools that complement conventional human survey techniques. Remote cameras are used to capture images of mid to large size mammals and can be mounted on trees or poles, and they take photos when movement is detected in front of them. Remote cameras can monitor wildlife such as caribou, bears, hare, and moose. They can also monitor human activity, including snowmobile, ATV use, and resource extraction. So what does life look like for a camera deployed on the land for a year? I'm going to show a clip from a silent video of a full year on the tundra through the lens of a remote camera set up in the Taidenenene Indigenous Protected Area as part of the Northwest Territory Biodiversity Monitoring Program. The Letzelke Dene First Nations Nihatni Dene Watchers of the Land deployed and retrieved over 300 remote cameras and audio recorders throughout the Indigenous protected area. So these sensors were out on the land from August 2021 until August 2022. This specific camera recorded life normally until May 5th, 2022, when it got a surprise visitor. So if the video isn't playing for you, we will post a link to the video in the Zoom chat as well. And I'll just go and share that now. love finding cameras and sensors and going through them afterwards, because you never know what you're going to find. So our next sensor we're talking about here today, sound recorders, or otherwise known as, some people call them autonomous recording units, ARUs. Please excuse the jargon if anyone says an ARU going forward. These are small computers with microphones that can be mounted to trees or poles, and they are used to monitor vocalizing species and can be programmed to record at certain times of day or night. Sound recorders can detect anything that creates sound, such as birds, frogs, bats, wolves, and also insects. They can also monitor the human soundscapes, including voices, ATV use, logging, and environmental noise, including the sounds of ice cracking. So what information do sound recorders or ARUs collect? So here's an example of a recording from an ARU that's part of the Samba K First Nations monitoring program. So hopefully you're able to hear it. In this short recording, the 7 species on the screen recorded. Can you hear them all? I hope everyone can hear that, because I can't right now. But I'll just keep moving on then. So most ARUs record sounds that humans can hear, audible sounds. And some can also record ultrasonic sounds to monitor species like bats. So what are the benefits and challenges of using these environmental sensors? So I've just taken it down to 3 main benefits of using sensors here. So sensors can be non-invasive and low stress to wildlife. So they can also collect long-term data in a single location. And they're relatively easy to use and relatively low cost. Some of the main challenges, though, of using these environmental sensors is it does create lots of data to process and manage. So you need to have training and capacity to manage that. And they can also be damaged or malfunction in the bush. And they're also meant to complement other wildlife survey methods. They won't necessarily provide all the answers needed, but they can help fill out that picture. So what can you use environmental sensor data to monitor? You can look at migratory species and when they return. You can look at protected species, where they're located, population sizes and distributions, climate change, habitat recovery, shifts in wildlife behavior, impacts of disturbance, and so much more. Really, it's open to you. What you can think of, you can probably monitor with sensors. So now that I've gone over the basics of environmental sensors, it's time to invite Jessica Jumbo to take over. So there's no one better to introduce Jessica than Jessica herself. So please, Jessica, the floor is yours.
Merci, Dave, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. And merci note for all of us being here and being able to be a part of this webinar. I am Jessica Jumbo, Decho Dene, specifically Sambake Gotine, that's Trout Lake people. I work for the Sambake First Nation as the Environment and Lands Coordinator, and I've been working in the field of environment and traditional knowledge since I was about 14 years old. So I'm here to present with the land monitoring the Sambake ARU project. So Sambake is a small isolated community 50 kilometers north of the BC border. It's Decho region's most isolated community, which is only accessible by winter road or fly-in in the summer months. Unique, the community is very unique. It's still very strong in their Dene laws and skills and making it ideal to combine Indigenous ways and Western science through our environmental project. Sambake Gotine have been seeing major and drastic changes, more so in the last decade, since their nomadic lives, bird populations have dropped. And it's become very concerning, and they're searching for new respectful ways of monitoring that align with their Dene laws and protocols to keep track of the changes. Samba-K is still very traditional, and we live as much as we can and live and eat directly from the land. That goes for sleeping in wall tents and collecting spruce boughs for our floor, hunting hides for clothing and garments and slippers and everything. We still eat goose and use medicines. Our youth are taught in rabbit snaring, and that's used for food and clothing. And of course, dry fish, dry meat is still one of the biggest main sources of food for the Dene people, because it's easy to store over a length amount of time. The Dene people have, for in time immemorial, studied the behaviors and cycles of the wildlife, the weather, and the changes, and gain the knowledge on how to move with the land in their cycles in order to ensure their survival. So the ARUs, the project, we started in 2018, and we only started working with 3 staff from ECCC. We deployed the ARUs, and this was just the ARUs for the first project, the first round, and we deployed them on 126 kilometers on the Samba-K Winter Road. And since then, Samba-K has recently become the lead on that project, with the utmost guidance and support from ECCC. Samba-K coordinator, myself, was trained online, and I coordinated the retrieval of the units for the first year with the students, the youth. We used ATVs on 126 kilometers of bog and muskeg winter road, crossing beaver dams and getting around beaver ponds. We brought with us an elder, 2 harvesters, myself, and 3 youth. The second round of deploying happened in winter 2022-2023, which was just this year, and we deployed and retrieved solely on our own. Both rounds have been successful, only with, of course, minor issues, getting stuck, capacity issues sometimes, and the odd units being left because trees fall, or and that the units are unretrievable. So here are some of the results from 2018. There's 175 sampling locations and audio recorders, and 91 species along 126 kilometers of the road. Please note that inside the graph are species at risk, and one of the most important reasons for this monitoring technique. And it's a way for the community to keep track of the species and their populations and relate it to the changes that are happening, so they can start putting things more in a flowing sense, and pre-predicting what a year or season can bring. Because in some of the Dene ways, a certain type of bird will come out right when spring starts. So if they're hearing that a month earlier, then they can start knowing that there's, on a consistent basis, they can start knowing their seasons are changing. And when their seasons are changing, they have to adjust their hunting and harvesting seasons. I think ARU and camera monitoring are eyes and ears on the land when we can't physically be present. As Dene people, we wish to be out there every day, all day, protecting their lands and working and feeding from them. But modern responsibilities kind of distract from that aspect. And the monitors kind of give us an idea of what's happening out there when we can't be out there, and leaving little carbon footprint, which is what we all love. I think it's important to the Dene people because, as I've mentioned before, they've respectfully studied the cycles of the land and its being, and it's so important to have these out there and to be there when we can't. The monitoring techniques that we use when we're deploying this are culture infused and gain important knowledge and information about unwanted harvest activity. They don't only just track the animals for us. We've added cameras to these monitors, to these units now, and it's also given the community members a sense of what's happening on their traditional area and if they can take steps to help express how to respectfully treat it. It's also really important for us to protect these areas because some of these areas are sacred and used for medicinal uses.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. This is some of our winter monitoring, and one of Summit-K's greatest qualities is we try to incorporate our youth in everything we do. They constantly shadow me for work, whatever type of work it is. Our main techniques are mentoring and shadowing, and hands-on training is what we find is more successful. The youth adjusted their schedules, which was pretty interesting to see as teenagers, but they adjusted their schedules and they were at the house and entering coordinates and packing units until 2 a.m. and prepping their gear and making sure trucks were fueled and ready to tackle the following day at 8 in the morning. And one of the units that's pictured here, one of the older units we use, and the youth love to call this the big guy. He's the heaviest and biggest monitor to deploy. And you could see our students there entering coordinates and information. That picture was taken at 1:30 in the morning, and a couple of small youth assisting in some of the deploying sheets that we have to fill out. This is the trail cam that is used now that we put the ARUs out, and we have some of these in just specific spots that we choose and we feel that's ideal that we'll see wildlife. And the students were astonished at how many pictures they could capture just sitting there. I think we pulled one out and it was 10,761. So that blew them away. It was really interesting for our older harvesters to see because the area we live in, Summit-K, is bog and muskeg, so it makes it really difficult to travel over summer months. And so to see cranes with young and that they're healthy and in their environment was really, really intriguing for them to see, and it gave them a lot of comfort as to the health of the animals during the seasons they can't actually see them. So, and the community has definitely discussed expansion after this. And we caught a beautiful lynx walking away there. So Summit-K found this, or we find every way where we can reintroduce or introduce our Dene educational system into the projects alongside Western science, and they are language infused. And Summit-K felt the most important piece was the knowledge from the elders, because they've been living with the land before any of us, and they have been passed the knowledge from the people living with the land before them. And any with the land projects, activities, wellness, or camps are language infused. So that gives a great aspect in transferring that language to our youth. The elders' knowledge was seeked to know the traditional knowledge. That was our first step of the area being worked in. because as I mentioned before, some areas are specific. They could be sacred sites, medicinal sites, burial grounds. Sometimes there's specific gender roles applied to that area. We just have to be, it could be a sensitive breeding ground. So that knowledge is transferred over to the people involved in the project. And then we figure out the project that we're going to do, or what the project entails, the outcomes, what's the expectancy of our researchers, what do they need completed. And then the third step is we bring in a coordinator like myself or somebody else, and they handle the coordination and trying to merge the project with the elders' knowledge and putting that on paper or making it a physical activity. Another big important part of this is the harvesters, the actual land users. And that's just not the men that hunt, it's the women picking berries that know in the area for so long, and they're very educated in medicinal ways and just natural uses from their land. So we got the knowledge, the harvesters to come in, and they're the mentors because they carry a lot of the knowledge from the elders from the beginning anyways, because they've just spent so much time with them. Then we bring in the youth, and the youth are the ones that are actually tackling the projects. So they have the harvesters mentoring and guiding them, carrying the knowledge, and the environmental coordinator comes in carrying the Western Science Project, and that becomes our merge. So the youth end up being vital pieces of the community because, as they say, they're able to walk in two worlds. They're able to carry the Dene knowledge, laws, and protocols, and carry the Western science education and complete the projects moving forward with the two. Please meet some of our youth team. These youth have been raised in the culture and were ideal in finding the areas where Dene TK could fit in with the Western science practices. They slept in pup tents in November after harvesting elu, putting them under the tent to keep the cold from coming up. They carried their snowshoes made by family members or that was given to them, because I think last year's winter monitoring, we were in 4 feet of snow, deploying the monitors and cameras. We were getting stuck in muskeg with quads that could probably sink half your body. They were slashing detours, reinforcing beaver dams so they can cross with ATVs, and they were shooting and plucking chicken to bring home to their elders, and they were just the stars of the show, and I couldn't thank them enough, because without them we wouldn't have been able to complete this project or bring this model to light. And some of the youth that aren't pictured, well, first I'll go through some of the youth pictured are here are Isaiah Kochia, Adam Lamelis, Tamara Denuanahani, and Dustin Kochia. A few others that participated just briefly are Jada Lamelis, Deanna Jumbo, and Esmeralda Antoine. One of the youth, though, in this picture is a really success story, and it's Isaiah Kochia. He was with the project right from 2018. He was really young. He helped deploy some. He did their full retrieval. He's worked the full winter projects, both of them. And the transfer of knowledge, cultural knowledge, has been successful to him. And this year, his training has been really successful. So Isaiah will, as a youth, be taking over the deployment and retrieval project for Samba K, our next round. So I decided I wanted to share the Samba K mission statement because it's really the base of how we try to move the community forward and do things. And especially to the second part of the mission statement, we hold so strongly in our hearts. And The Sambake First Nation will become a self-sufficient and self-governing nation on its traditional land within the Decho territory. Its strength will come from the land, the tradition of its elders, and from the education and skills of its community members. So that is the end of my slide, but I would like to say a huge must-see to ECC, GNWT, Wilford Laurier, and most of all, Jocelyn and Samuel from ECCC and CWS to guiding and supporting Sambake First Nation in applying their mission to one of our environmental projects successfully. And as Dene, when working with the land or removing any element or being, the Dene like to leave an offering. So for example, if I was to take a water sample to be analyzed, we usually leave a bit of tobacco, but because this project is lengthy and there's multiple units, at the start of every project or deployment round, we like to leave tobacco and say a quick prayer because we are leaving elements out there that aren't really natural, and they're collecting something that we would like, and we're analyzing it's the land is giving us something. So we start off the project by paying tobacco, and when we're done picking up the last monitor, we stop and we offer tobacco again. And this was the shot on the last day. We picked up our last unit, and the students just felt that it completed their project. So that concludes my presentation. So Masi Cho and Masi Notse, and thank you all and take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. It's so fantastic the work that you're doing, and it's so interesting. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions as well that come your way in the Q&A coming up. But thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Masi.
Now I'm going to be inviting John McDonald to speak with us as well from the Fort Smith Métis Council, and I've heard that Louise is also here, so we might get an opening prayer. So John, over to you.
Yeah, I'll reintroduce Louise just because she wasn't online. As I said, she has a family history in this area that dates back a long time that helped build the infrastructure, roads and buildings around this community. Long line of trappers, hunters, and land users. She has an incredible history of her background. She was the first female firefighter to become a crew leader and a fire boss. She was the first sergeant, female sergeant for the Canadian Rangers, and led 42 members. She's started things with troubled youth, COPS, which is Citizens on Patrol with RCMP, involved in multiple sun dances. She's been reelected multiple times as a town councillor and still sitting on the town council. And same thing with the Métis Council, and she's been elected multiple times there as well. Mother of three, land user, trapper, hunter, sustainability on the land for medicine and food, and she's well respected in the community and around this area, and well known, and it's an honor for me to introduce her. Maybe she didn't get on. Louise, would you like to say a prayer?
Well, maybe if Louise is able to finally jump in, then she can jump in with you, John, and just let you know.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess I can start on my presentation. It's going to be a little tough to follow Jessica with that amazing talk. So using cameras and ARUs for monitoring, a little bit background about the Fort Smith Métis Council and our newly developed Environmental Lands and Natural Resource Division. Originally, we started out working with ENR or ECC, being boat drivers, and we just showed an interest and a passion for the environment and wanted to get more hands-on. And from there, we kind of developed a relationship with ENR, and slowly we started taking over different projects and working with them and building that partnership. And one of those was the NWT Biodiversity Monitoring Program, which is wildlife cameras, bird, bat, and amphibian audio recording units. So our vision for this project, or what we see in our division, is we want to continuously monitor this area and the environment and establish some baselines, and working with elders, land users, and just getting a baseline for the environment around here and letting the community know that our environment and the habitat is sustainable and healthy. And from that, we can detect if there's any changes that may be something to look at. From that, we want to utilize Western science, which is, the cameras and ARUs, and utilizing elders' knowledge and local land users' knowledge, and combining that and bridging the gap to have a better understanding of what's going on in these areas. None of this monitoring has ever been done around our area in the South Slave. And so, we're a little bit behind, but we want to still establish a baseline. So we also trying to build partnerships with the federal government, provincial, territorial, and any other Indigenous governments in our area, so we can work together to conserve and ensure there's sustainable habitat for our future generations. And if we all working together, there's more data that we can collaborate with, and we're all on the same page. So that's kind of our goal, is to work together and it's enable the environment to keep on going. One of our goals is also to inform the community, not just our members, but we want to inform the entire community of what's going on in the area. We want to let them know about wildlife, fish, water, everything to do with the environment. We want to keep an eye on, and really keep industry in check, as well, as we're downstream from the oil sands and dams and a lot of industry upstream. So some of the benefits that we've seen is, or we view, is that there is going to be a baseline data going forward. So we have a better understanding of what the populations are of birds, bats, amphibians, and wildlife, and working with land users and accumulating their data and their information, and moving forward and conjoining to make sure that we can all have the same view of what's going on. The land users know better than anyone else out there of what's going on. And if we can work together in conjunction, I think there'd be a huge value in that. Elders coming out. So we've been trying to get elders and land users to come out with us on setting up these cameras and giving us information of, they know the land, so they know the wildlife trails, they know good areas that are going to be picking up wildlife. And so we're bringing out youth so they can pass along that knowledge. And we're also training youth to work this into a career for them. I didn't know could be a career when I was in high school. And we want those youth to know that this could be something valuable for them in the future. So we started working with ENR last fall. It was first deployments in the South Slave. We deployed 50 cameras in 10 different plots in different habitats. Along with that, we put in 50 audible recording units for birds and amphibians. And then we put in 10 bat sonar audio recorder units and 10 weather monitors. We flew out with helicopter, and that's kind of where I got my training from ENR. And from that, I was able to train our team and our guardians in our Elner division. And then from that, we took the team out this winter. We have new snow machines and new equipment to go out and deploy during the winter months. And so, yeah, we kind of took over, send them up. They have, had the confidence in us. And I think that's the best thing moving forward, is working and making that partnership with governments and the local Indigenous groups taking control. So the next slide there is a little snippet of kind of the areas that we were doing. These hexagons are kind of picked out from a GIS map. I think they're 5 kilometers across. And so the idea is to put up cameras 300 meters apart in one grid, and try and catch whatever you can in that grid. We had to kind of stray away from that and set up the cameras in the way that we felt was a little better, with different diversity habitat and knowledge from people that came out on the land with us. Earl Evans is on the call here. He was a big part of showing us where good locations are. And in the winter, it's a little more difficult to access certain spots. So we're able to get into different areas where we couldn't get into in the fall with helicopters or planes, sorry. Yeah, so this is a little snapshot of us setting up some cameras on, I think that was out by the Tolson Winter Road and close to Slave River Lowlands. Yeah, we did manage to set up 4 plots this winter. The rest that we were planning on doing 6 other plots, but just road access and weather conditions limited us to get to different areas. So like, it was a huge benefit having Earl out with us to show different spots and getting information from other local land users and trappers. So we did run into some issues, and I do want to touch on that. There was some issues with communication from chief and councils and different Indigenous governments not communicating with their members and trapline owners that this was going on. So it was a huge lesson learned for us. We end up setting up cameras on somebody's trapline and they were unaware of it, and they were really mad and they thought that the government's trying to spy on them. So we had to go out and take those cameras down. And I happened to bump into the guy on the trap line while I was taking the cameras down, and I've known him my whole life. So I was able to communicate with them what was going on, and that, there's a benefit to working together on this. So I offered, to bring him out, let him show me where the proper places are to set these cameras up. and let them know that the government's not trying to spy on them or anything like that. There's a huge wall up, between government and Indigenous people automatically for reasons I don't have to mention. But that's one of our big key factors that we learned is we have to get those people that know the land out there and get them involved in the whole process, like right from the beginning to the end, and even analyzing data and giving them the data so they know a better understanding of their land. But they know best already. When I talk to them about the animals that were out there and what we're trying to get population numbers for, and he already knew what's out there, but he was understandable after that. And I think that's a huge factor, is having local people and local Indigenous governments, partnerships with GNWT or the federal government, whichever scenario it is, just so that you can be involved the whole process and understand everything. And if everyone's working together, it's going to be a lot easier to work and to figure out what's going on in that habitat. So from my perspective, every single person that has a trap line or a cabin or that's their area, their family's been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years, so they know best. So we need to work with them and have them involved in the entire process. And like the whole Western science and traditional knowledge and bridging that gap, that's the key to making a program like this successful. And I'm a land user and hunter my whole life, so for me to communicate with these guys was a lot easier than like, no disrespect to the government or anything, but a government agent coming out to a guy and saying, hey, this is what we're doing, coming from the Métis or whatever Indigenous group it is, or a local person, was a huge benefit for us to like let them know what's going on, instead of them just coming on their trap line and seeing these cameras all over the place. So in finishing up here, like with our division, we've acquired a ton of equipment, snow machines, boats, electrofishing boats, electrofishing backpacks, environmental DNA analyzers, water monitoring equipment, cameras, ARUs, weather stations. And this is all part of our process to ensure our environment and habitat around our area can be monitored, and we know what's going on. And I think it's a huge step forward to be utilizing Western science with our traditional knowledge and utilizing elders like Earl, and there's a bunch of Métis elders that we utilize with their ton of knowledge on the land, and building these relationships between territorial, federal, ECC, ECCC, CWS. Those are all gonna help with moving forward and keeping our environment clean and safe, and realizing if any changes are coming down the line. For instance, we're starting to utilize cameras for water levels, and I know there's already water level in place, but we're just trying to expand everything we can do and take it into ourselves and train our guys. The picture you see there is our new crew. We've been taking out youth. So 2 of those youth there have been with us for 3 years, I believe, since they're 16. And we're training them to be guardians in this area. We're looking at bringing in little programs or classes to high schools, and just showing the students that, hey, there's a career here for you if you want, and if you're interested and you got passion for the environment, and there's a pathway there for you. We're looking to do so much more in the environment as well, with monitoring ice, air, water level, shore erosion, and multiple other wildlife and fish studies. And none of this could have been successful without the help of the governments and our president and council, our management, and from that support, we can move forward and make this really monumental. If we all come together and have the same view, if all the Indigenous governments and local governments and federal governments are working together and collaborating and communicating and work together, we'll have the same goal. We all have the same goal. We want to make our environment last forever. Mother Earth deserves us working for her. So Masi Cho, and thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And another great presentation. Really hope that these presentations have inspired you as much as they have inspired myself. And I know all the other panelists that are going to be answering questions. And Jessica and John, fantastic. So excited to hear about that amazing work. So our panel of environmental sensor users would be happy to help support the implementation of many other community-based monitoring programs. So is this something that you or your community might be interested in? If so, we would love to get in touch and find out how best we could help support your program or community. So the panel of environmental sensor training, the sensor users have been creating environmental sensor training materials. Would this be something that you would be interested in taking, this training opportunity? So if yes or no, please let us know. You can let us know in the Zoom chat, or we also invite you to participate in some interactive questions about this using the online Mentimeter platform. So there's a couple ways to access this. There's going to be a link posted in the chat that you could click directly, and then you could, on your laptop or your smartphone or something, be able to access Mentimeter through that. You could also scan the QR code on the screen, and it'll be held on the screen as well, moving forward. And that'll take you directly to that interactive questions and prompts. You can also just type in www.menti.com and use the code 2290986 as well. So this will take you to a couple interactive questions and prompts, and you can interact with these throughout the Q&A period. We'll take a look at the responses at the end of today's presentation. I'll just give you a quick peek of what this looks like. So we'll be able to see questions and answers as they come in there. Well, thank you so much, Jessica and John. And I'm so excited now to time to get to all of your questions. So we have a panel of experienced environmental sensor users from many different organizations that'll be helping to answer your questions. And Francis Stewart, who leads the Wild Lab at Laurier University, has been monitoring the questions coming in. So Francis, can you help us get started with asking the first question? And I'd invite the other webinar organizers and environmental sensor users to turn their videos on, and we can start answering questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And just thanks to everyone for being on the call today. This is really exciting to see the turnout. And I think, does a great job of demonstrating just how important and interested everyone is bringing together this interest for Northern monitoring. Just quickly, before I get to questions, I just want to make sure everyone knows that if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a question and answer little box. You can press on there. Feel free to type in your questions, and we'll get going and ask them to both our speakers today. And we also have a great panelist of of people from very different backgrounds doing this work across the North. While the questions are filtering in, I'll just mention that, I'm based at Wilfrid Laurier University. I lead a group called the Wild Lab, which is a whole bunch of motivated students who are based on some of these projects. And some of the key things we try to do is to engage with communities and engage with youth to help coordinate these kinds of projects. So some of the students are online today, and happy to be chatting to anyone who's interested in getting involved from that perspective as well. So I don't see any questions quite yet. I have a couple of my own. I did see just a couple hands up from people who had their hands up throughout the presentation. I don't know if anyone wants to just ask a quick question. I think you might not be able to unmute yourself, but you can always, if your hand's been up, you can post your question into the question and chat. Question and answer session. Here we have a question from Kurt. Kurt asks, is there a specific funding pot to purchase cameras from? Maybe we'll put that first towards Jessica and John. Where do you get your cameras?
So we've got multiple pots of funding that we're pulling from. Our Guardians funding, we have some money there for equipment, AROM funding, as well as we've been approved for SIMP funding, which is cumulative impact monitoring funding. Those are the three main ones for our group, and hopefully we get oil sands monitoring funding as well soon.
Yeah, that would be pretty similar for ours. We get ours there's no one funding pot. Prayers that cover one whole project. Usually projects this big have to be pulled from multiple sources. So similar to John, there's SIMP funding, Guardians program funding. I think Makeway helps us do some environmental monitoring work or bring forth our projects. Nature First Nations helps funnel funding into the community. So in our CHAP funding, we try to tweak some of that if we're short, so our community uses some of those stuff. So yeah.
There is a ton of funding out there. Like that could be a full-time job, just finding funding for sure. There's millions and millions of dollars out there available. Just have to be on the ball and make sure you get your proposals in and have an idea of what you want to do, right? So there's tons of funding. You just got to be searching for it.
Yeah, it's kind of an ongoing thing, isn't it? You're always looking and applying for things. It's kind of a never stopping thing, but maybe I'll just open it up to the rest of the panelists, because it's nice that we have people from so many backgrounds here. So, I can chime in, but anyone else have any comments on where some other pots of funding that people can access?
Maybe I'll just add a little something here, exactly what Jessica and John mentioned. I think there's quite a few different pots, and it's also when and if applicable to a given context for a given group. But we also have quite a few there's quite a few partners. I'm thinking about the ADG crew, for instance, who bought like quite a significant amount of cameras. And there's also Iris Catholic and the Identinity group that are actually in the works of purchasing as well. So the idea of kind of building a little bit of a community to learn from each other about how they all gain that experience of purchasing and what might be the different options. I think that's just that in itself is a great opportunity for dialogue.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Anyone else? Claudia, I'm looking at you because you've had a lot of experience buying cameras from different pots as well. So anything to add? We have lots of questions coming in too. So
we've been pretty creative about funding. When I was working with the NWT, there was a lot of federal money in conservation right now and Guardians programs. And also the federal government's really keen to meet targets and with IPCAs. So a lot of the money was just federal money, and then when it became fiscal year end, always having that in the back of your mind that cameras are something that you can purchase. You can purchase directly from Reconyx. If you're getting the ARUs, you can purchase directly from Wildlife Acoustic, and they're very efficient, and they get them to you pretty quickly.
Okay, great. We can maybe always come back to that. I'm gonna go over because there's a couple other great questions that have just come in here. So thank you all. Aiden Shepherd asks, how are you approaching information and data management and stewardship? Do you have any recommendations specifically related to data stewardship for other multi-partner community-based monitoring initiatives in the North?
I can try and tackle that question. Hi, my name is Erin Tattersall. I'm a PhD student with the University of British Columbia and the Wildlife Coexistence Lab, and this is actually something that I'm actively looking at as part of my PhD project. So yeah, great question. And there isn't really one set way of managing or stewarding data at this time. I mean, it sounds like probably John and Jessica have some recommendations from their approach, but yeah, definitely something that we need to spend some more time on looking at, making sure that the data that is collected is accessible in formats that community can access it and control it. Issues are obviously can be millions and millions of images, or like it's a lot of data, and so there are a lot of platforms. For example, one we use is WildTracks for stewarding, for processing images and recordings, and that's an online platform through the Alberta Biodiversity Monitoring Institute. But there's a lot of other great platforms out there for processing images and recordings to help you kind of manage data. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now. I don't know, John and Jessica, you probably have some things to say about that as well.
You can go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, so most of the data that we collect is community owned. And before we start moving forward with any researchers, universities, companies, we sign non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. And that's just for the really, really sensitive traditional knowledge stuff that we apply to the project. There's always a nice big discussion about the outcomes and everything like that. And of course, the data that the researchers, like the whole point of them coming to the communities or their whole reason for coming in, of course, their data is theirs. They really assist us in building ours. So the data they need for their projects is always theirs and owned, but we get to keep a lot of that. Plus, it's a lot of our cultural and traditional knowledge tweaked with it. It's always a different level with the Indigenous governments of what's super confidential. And super confidential would be like sacred areas and really deep spiritual protocols, but the overall how to treat the land and everything like that, that's really open and shared with them. So it's community owned and the researchers own theirs, and it's a really good sharing agreement. We're starting to build our community database. We're using GIS, ArcGIS, the survey 123. The kids are really finding that easy to use. And then we're building a community database, and it will be different levels, like I said, just like the traditional knowledge, if it's super important and how much is accessible from the outside of the community. But that's kind of how we're just handling it as we go right now, but it seems to be really working for us that way.
Mm-hmm. For us in the South Slave, like I said, we just started in the fall, and so when we go pick up those cameras next fall, we'll be able, like we want to get involved with analyzing all those pictures and analyzing that data with ECC. And that's been our whole goal, is to not just be data collectors, but be part of the process, right from data collecting, analyzing, and distributing into the community. So if that's going through millions of pictures, then that's what our crew's going to do. So we're excited to see the data, and we don't really have a plan for it. I know the government does, but I haven't been involved in that process as of yet.
And maybe just to add a little something here about, like, I totally appreciate especially the wording, like data stewardship, and we talk a lot about data sharing, but I think it's well beyond that. So that is definitely a big part of these different projects in terms of sorting all of that out, because people are always like quite excited, like let's do this, and having these hard conversation or these open conversation about data stewardship in terms of like, what is the data ownership agreement, what is the data sharing, what is the data use, like how can the data be used, and all of these kind of really interesting conversation, and also understanding that it's dynamic in nature, right? Like whoever makes a decision on a given day in 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know how frequently it needs to be revisited, but it definitely needs to be revisited often, and never mind past data that were collected. So there's a lot of really important and interesting conversation. And it's also, when we talk about sensitive data, different groups, different place will have different sensitive data, and we need to make sure we understand what is sensitive for us versus what is sensitive for our Indigenous partners can be quite different. So there's a lot of really cool learning from each other and trust building throughout that process. So yeah, no, thanks a lot for the question, and something tells me that we would be able to learn a fair bit from you, actually.
I'm going to just use that point to jump off to another question further down here, just to say, is there, Michael Gass asks if there's training to analyze data. And so I know of a few sources, but I just was curious about your experiences so far in terms of how you're processing and learning about working with these types of data.
We haven't started analyzing the data yet. The two of us in my division are taking, we took a course from UNBC for environmental monitoring. That's part of that course. But we do utilize ENR or ECC for a lot of our training, and they work with us hands-on to do lab work. We do the fish dissecting and analysis with them in the lab. And so, we've made it clear to them that we want to be part of this whole process. So the hands-on training, and then we do the UNBC, University of Northern British Columbia. That environmental monitoring program is recognized by NWT. So that's why we chose that program.
I might just jump in here as well, and we have this large panel, and you can see the advisory group members on the screen right now as well. And part of this coming together is trying to bring all these resources to one place as well, and develop training materials. And so part of this training goes through the whole life cycle of a monitoring program, including the processing, data management, and the analyzing, and some basic analysis as well. So that's kind of part of this idea of bringing all of this knowledge together. And it's not going to be step by step of every single part, but it's going to be the main parts and where to go for more information as well, and give a really good background on everything that goes into these projects that can be, as our panelists have talked about, are very very full on programs as well.
And can I just add to that? nicely said there, Dave. It's Danny with GNWT. I just want to say that one of the main goals of this webinar is to bring everybody together so that we can work through some of these questions and support each other as we go through with data analysis, data processing, data stewardship, asking those hard questions that was raised and Sam kindly responded to. But forming this community so that we can use this tool together and be stronger on the other side. So we're here to support. Love to hear your questions.
I can just add quickly to that there. I mean, I help to train my graduate students in terms of data analysis, and there's other courses we can share through this group and resources for that too, some in person and some virtual. So maybe connecting afterwards about all of these things is going to be a really good take home for everyone on this call and a really nice aspect. We have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna keep going here. So Dr. Joe Dragon has a question. He asks, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge with braiding Western science and Indigenous knowledge? What is your biggest lesson learned from your projects? He says, great work and merci.
I think just over the years I've been doing a lot of this work since I was about 15 years old in my community. I think the biggest challenge is the open-mindedness from both parties. The Dene come from a world where it's just all natural resource and we don't understand technology and like yeah, how things are done a little bit out there. So and then when you have researchers and especially companies, not researchers are they're great to work with, but some companies, they're really dead set in their ways. They come with very strict policies, insurance policy, that's hard to tweak. So it's really nice when you have a group of Indigenous people and the group of researchers or company or organization you're working with that's bringing forth that Western knowledge. It's really nice just to have that open mind of them being wanting to tweak things and done respectfully to the community and the people. Because so it's, to me, the challenge was open-mindedness. I have come across people who, when I said, can we leave and that, and there's a lot of explaining, a lot of being willing to take the time and have the patience to explain what this means to us to help them understand. And ultimately, it ends up benefiting both parties. Things are done efficiently, respectfully. There's tactics involved. It's funding saving, like, you know, it becomes really great. But I think most of all, it's having to be open-minded with each other, compassionate and understanding towards each other, and willing to hear each other out and just tweaking your ways. Sometimes all of us are dead set in how things are done.
Mm-hmm.
John, did you want to add to that? Yeah.
Great response. The biggest challenge that I see is Western science is viewed as government and Indigenous knowledge. I mean, I'm second generation from residential schools. So, right. So my mom was in residential schools and there's a wall up as soon as it's government, there's a wall up between Indigenous and the government. And rightfully so. So to break that wall down is the biggest challenge, I think, and trying to explain to land users that the environmental side of the government has the same view and the same want as everybody else. So that's what I think is the biggest hurdle. some of the biggest lessons I've learned is there needs to be respect. You have to respect, first of all, Mother Earth. Then you have to respect the people that have been there for thousands of years. And you have to get them involved and show them that, hey, we're here to help. We're here to be involved with you. And our vision of protecting the environment is on the same page. And I think it's super key to have, like, we're kind of a middle person from the government to the land users. And as an Indigenous organization, I think that's a huge factor in moving forward and breaking down that wall and moving together forward. So yeah, that's kind of what I've learned from this.
Maybe just quickly adding a little bit of that other side of the coin, I guess. And I think I really want to echo what Jessica mentioned about the communication and the trust. And it's also, people need to understand that they're fundamentally different approaches. So it's normal that they're not the same sort and they don't perfectly align all the time. We're talking about Western science that is so many years versus a study for 1 year. Traditional knowledge is over a large area, whereas Western science might be subsampling in some smaller areas. So there's no reason to expect that the results are exactly the same. So the notion of complementarity, I think, is really, really important here. And yeah, Joe, just want to kind of add a little bit, like we've talked about that quite a bit over the years, but yeah, happy to even hear your thoughts on that.
I'm not sure if Joe can speak up here, Sam. If you can, Joe, feel free to chime in. We're happy to have people to be involved in this discussion. If not, then post something in the chat or ask another question and we'll keep it going, because it's a great point and a great question that we're all involved with. So it's that's good. Joe says it cannot access. Okay. Happy to be following up on that. Dave, how are we doing for time here? We have a little bit longer, right?
We've got another 10 minutes in our scheduled time here, but we also said that we would stay on the line for the next until the end of the hour here. But for people who do need to jump off at the end of this half hour, I might just go through the last couple of slides here. We'll take a quick look at Mentimeter and then we'll get back to answering questions as well, if that works for everyone.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Oh gosh, I need to get back into slide mode now. All right. So I'm so glad we were able to get to so many of these questions, and thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate that a lot of this work relies on knowledge shared by elders, as we've just been talking about. So if anyone here has joined us today with elders or knowledge keepers, we'd really like to acknowledge their presence and thank them for joining us with a small gift. So if you can please get in touch with Claudia Haas from Laurier University at the following email address on the screen. And Claudia, if it's okay to post that in the chat as well, that would be wonderful, so that people can get in touch. And let me know if I need to go back. But we also want to just let you know that we're working on this training materials. And future information on how that will be shared, or if you're interested in being involved, I'd really encourage you to reach out to Danny or Sam at the email addresses on the screen here. You've heard from both of them already, and Claudia as well. So if you're interested in future training, information, or webinars, let's stay in touch. So if you can get in touch with either of them, and their emails will be posted in the chat as well. So thank you for all of your feedback. And now, as I promised, we're going to take a quick look at the Mentimeter answers that are responses, because I was really impressed that there's a lot there. So I'm just going to share that now. So hopefully you can see all of this. So we were able to, these are the answers that we got for what are you interested in monitoring use environmental sensors? And looks like we're still getting more answers because they're coming in still. So I can see wildlife is the biggest one here that I'm seeing. Birds is really big. Bats is really big. And then in smaller, temperature, access difficult lands, ice breakup, population abundance, caribou. Someone just put in yes, let's just get some environmental sensors out there. Addressing technology, large mammals changes. This is really great to see.
So I just want to interject there. Another thing that is interesting to see in the cameras is invasive species, like muskox coming south, deer coming north, cougars. You know, there's a lot of animals that are moving around in different temperate zones as well, which is going to be interesting to see.
Absolutely. It's really cool because there's so many different ways that these sensors can be used and things that they can be used to look at. So it's really cool to see what everyone's thinking about that here. So the next question was, would you be interested in taking an environmental sensor training course if one were available? And it seems like our overwhelming answer is yes. And then no, but members of my community organization might be. And we got one no. So we're not going to get yes every single time, but it's great to see that there is a lot of interest in this. And so what are you interested in learning more about? So we had a couple option here. So using wildlife cameras in the bush or sound recorders, ARUs in the bush. But the overwhelming answers look to be dealing with the data, processing images and recordings, and how to analyze the data. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. This is one of the main challenges of using this technology is what do you do with it after you get it back? And so there's lots of resources out there, and this training program that we're developing is trying to address that as well and point people in the right direction. So that's wonderful. And so we got a couple answers here of what would you like to see covered in this training program. So these are all this is really helpful for us to be able to see what kind of feedback we're looking that people are providing, that what you would like to see. Data processing, training on software, how the program could be expanded, monitor other facets of the environment. Yeah. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but these are all wonderful, and these will also help to inform us with this program moving forward. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. This is just another way of asking to get in touch and make sure that we'll be get in touch if you are interested in this kind of training program. And we're so excited that you're able to join us here today. And we just really hope that you found this beneficial as well. And we're so excited to get to more questions. So if you have to jump off, feel free to jump off. But with this is also being recorded, and so we'll be posting this on the Aurora Research Institute's YouTube channel, so it will be available to share with others as well. So thank you so much, and maybe we'll get back to some questions here.
Great, thank you, everyone. We'll keep going through the questions. We'll get to as many as we can, and if we don't, we said we would follow up. So just starting at the top here, Jonathan asks, after each retrieval of the cameras, what is done with the data collected? And were there any areas that were historical to the people of each area? What are most common to collect data compared to a used trail and a used? I'm not quite sure if I get that last question, but what's done with the data, and are there any areas for each of you that are really important historical significance?
So in Sumba Cay, we just received the results from 2018 not too long ago. But what Sambake is hoping to do with the data, not only does it keep track of populations and what kind of species are out there after it gets analyzed and sent back to us, and whether there's species at risk is one of the most common things. But what Sambake would like to do, and I think you're involved in a Guardians program too. I think we just met in Yellowknife, but what we would like to do with the data is the AFROM work that we do about the fish and the temperatures of the water, and we do weather data and everything. So what we would like to do is start overlapping all those different projects. So when Samuel comes with the data or we get sent the results, we're overlapping it with our seasonal and water changing data, because as Benny, we all know everything moves in unison together. A certain species comes out, which means going to signal the ice breaking, and it's all a cycle together. So when we overlap that data, we can start seeing at the rate coming from a Dene perspective of how it's changing, and if we should be changing our spring and harvesting seasons, our winter hunts. Like we'd be able to adjust how we move with the land based on overlapping all these different projects, not just looking at one set. So that's what Sambake is hoping to do with the data. One of the things is we haven't really expanded to a trail that's not been really used frequently by people, so I don't really know that. And that's after the second run, that's where Sambake's hopes is. We've discussed that with Samuel and his team, is we are now thinking of expanding out to actual traditional areas. And yes, there was multiple sacred areas along the winter road. That is something that model shows of why it's so important for Dene traditional knowledge to be incorporated with Western science, because there was a few spots that we do have to keep mind for, and how we carry ourselves around that area, and not making loud noises, and just being overly respectful of that area. And that was something that the youth and the harvesters that we used already grew up with that story. So it just really signifies how important that merge of that knowledge is. So when the youth were carrying out the work for the project through Western tactics, that's when they brought in their cultural knowledge and said, oh, we're in this area. I remember Grandpa saying, you can't move too fast, you can't be too loud. So they were telling each other, be careful. And if you don't take anything from this area, even if you leave tobacco, that area is just to be left untouched. So it's things like those that really comes to importance when that merges. So yeah, there are sacred sites. Those are stuff we like to hold unless it's told in a face-to-face setting, and when we're ready to share that with researchers. So, but thank you for that question, Masi.
Great, thank you so much, Jessica, for that. John, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective?
Oops, I was muted. Well, we haven't retrieved any cameras yet and analyzed any data. We like super new to starting this. So, but we are reaching out to land users and trapline owners and seeing if there is any traditional areas that should be protected or respected. And definitely that's going to go into where we set them up. For us, the best thing is to utilize elders like Earl and trapline owners like another gentleman is Kenny that has trapline out here. And those, like I say, those people have had those in their family for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So obviously they know best of what's going on out there and where to set up cameras, and then sharing that data with them, I think, is going to be hugely important. For us here in Fort Smith, we are putting together a newsletter that's going to go out bi-yearly for all the things we're doing, not just the camera monitoring, but for caribou, for wolverine, for fish, for water. And we're sending out bi-yearly newsletters just stating what we're doing and what's going on, that the fish are safe to eat, the water is safe to drink, and the animals are healthy populations to hunt. That's kind of our main focus, is to communicate that to the community.
Maybe just building off of the trap line question there, Louise has a question that asks, should land users be made aware of keeping a heads up of what animals are inhabiting our trap lines? And if yes, who do we give this type of information to? Is that something either of you coordinate with trappers in terms of your projects?
Yeah, I do. Not just trapping, with fishing too. Not that there's invasive species, but anytime there's like a harvest where somebody's out for a hunt, or the women are out berry picking, or somebody's done like, a weekend activity, I do like to go talk to them. Just a brief conversation, like, if they've shot a moose, if they see any ticks, if they've caught a fish, what's the consistency of the flesh of the fish, just to see if there's any changes. It's happened so much so often that people do come and just tell me right away, oh my goodness, I found this. There was caterpillars that people didn't see. We had a mourning dove in Sumbakay. I think 2 or 3 years ago. We just had a turkey vulture this year. So yeah, so people do come and like the especially harvesters that have used the land, and they're like, I see this out there, what is it? First question, am I allowed to eat it? But yeah, they're encouraged to bring it forward. And I think once you get into the routine of going and asking them, and it's not directly asking them what changes do you see, as when you're approaching Indigenous harvesters or elders, it has to be done in a story. And you can't just say, give me this information, I need it. It's
respect.
Tell me, respect, tell me your trip, and they'll tell you the whole story, and you have to pick out what you could see the changes as. And that's how it's done. It's done through a totally different communication style. So, but yeah.
Yeah, to add on that, like our goal is to involve, if we're putting up any cameras in anyone's area, we'd love to have them involved with us right from the process, beginning to the end. And I think that information could also help with their trapping. If we could get population densities, and we could figure out, what are you trapping for? Well, muskrats are super high this year, so we're going to trap muskrats, or, beavers or populations are coming up, or whatever the case may be. We can help determine what the populations are. And we'd love to be able to get data from your area. And like, that's key information. And I think it's valuable, and you should probably be paid for that, in my opinion. And if you want to share that data with us, and we can share the data with you that we collect, the relationship is what needs to be built between Indigenous governments, territorial or provincial or federal governments, and the land users and trapline owners. And it's key. If you have cameras out there, yeah, I'd love to collaborate with you more about, a path forward for that, Louise.
And maybe just to add to that, the trap lines, those are all information that is often not available to the government neither, nor that we should be knowing that. So that is where it creates a little bit of a tricky situation. And it's also, like John mentioned, a lot of engagement, researchers, government staff, we are actually engaging with council, we're engaging with resource managers and other stuff like, and we don't have access to every single individual, and nor should we, I think, otherwise it would create a lot of confusion. But having people like Jessica, like John, like, I'm pretty darn happy that John is the one who ended up encountering that trapper and was able to, let's say, diffuse the situation. And never mind, there was a GNWT label on the camera as well, so it could have created all kind of awkwardness. And often, obviously, we want to do our best. We want to know people. We want to talk to people. But the idea of trying to kind of work together, but in that kind of co-production mode, and having local leaders that are helping to communicate the goal of that overarching project, because I think it's also trying to understand role and responsibilities, I think, to the extent that it meets everyone's needs. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky question, that and the whole data stewardship question. I think those are the two conversations that requires significant amount of time and engagement, which is, but that's, again, that's how we build trust, and that's how we build friendship.
And that's a key part to what we're doing, is being from the community. I've been a hunter and land user my whole life, and I know everyone's trap lines anyway. So the local land users know more than the government already, and so why not utilize that information and work with everybody together?
Yeah, really serve as a bridge between different aspects of all of these projects, right? It takes us all to do it. There's just a couple quick comments / questions left here. So someone anonymous asks about, they say, berry picking spots. And so we'll try and turn that into a question. If you or any community members have thought about using these cameras for things other than wildlife, there's a lot we can get out of them in terms of green up and vegetation, etc. So maybe any comments on that. And then the person just follows up with, do you allow community to know where the cameras are located before or after you set them up? And if so, do you have any concerns over missing or stolen cameras?
Yes, so for us, that was a learning lesson too, is that land users and local trappers weren't notified by their chief and council or government. And so we actually built some signs that we could post up in the area. Pretty simple, it just says wildlife monitoring in effect. Please do not tamper with equipment. And so people are aware that something's going on. We put our Métis symbol on there, so if they have any questions or concerns, they can call and figure out about that. I'm going to put a few on my berry picking areas so nobody's stealing my berries. But no, for the most part, I in this area, we don't have a big issue with poachers or people going out. Most people around here go out to fill their fridge and their freezer and are pretty respectable about what's going on out on the land. Except for that one situation that I had to deal with. He was going to cut the trees down and drop those cameras and recording units off the ENR, and before I bumped into him. So I think it's huge to have an Indigenous government that's collaborating with government, and it puts an ease on everybody else and lets them know that we're in this together, and nobody's trying to steal or take advantage of any situation. We're here trying to collaborate and get a better understanding of our environment and move forward on that.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? Anything to add there?
Maybe quickly, for us, it's a calculated risk. We always know that there's a chance, but as far as I'm concerned, we don't really know if it's a bear or a human, so we kind of like to think that it's the bear. But we do have examples where there was a hunter along the highway going up to Wrigley from Fort Simpson a few years back who saw a unit, brought it back to ENR or to their band office, and we were managed to actually retrieve that unit that was on the ground. So yeah, I think it's all about building trust, communicating, and making as most people aware as possible, and those things take time. So, but so far so good.
Yeah, ours wasn't really trust or anything. We are already knowledgeable enough not to put them in sacred areas. Women had thought about berry spots because each one person has their special place. So, and if somebody was in there, they'd know somebody's telling. So, but mainly it was more people fooling around with the units. I think one year there was a forest fire and some guys tried to stand. I'm not sure if Samuel picked it up. They tried to stand next to it and sing into the mic. I think last year, our first camera deploy, we had some hunters along the winter road that were kind of scared, not scared, but wondering if they caught their harvest on the camera because it was quite the show taking down a bull moose, and one of the cameras was near, so they weren't sure about that. So it's a lot of just, yeah, but we definitely don't put them in sacred areas. However, in my community, with the camera pictures, there are animals we are not allowed to display. The caribou are very sacred in my community.
Mhm.
So I've been asked by my elders not to share pictures of them. So we did have multiple pictures of caribou that I couldn't put up. There's certain things an animal could be doing in the photo that we're not allowed to share because that moment the animal is doing that is a spiritual sacred thing. So there are some rules around it, but we always tap into the elders and make sure it's done in a respectful way. So, and then reiterate that with the researchers and the funders, and there's never been a problem on that side.
Great, thank you. I was I've on other projects I've received some very interesting camera photos, which I will not give anyone any ideas on here, but yes, you get all sorts. Yes, good that the respect is there, Jessica. We just have a note from Jay Noel saying, thank you, everyone. Great collaboration. And then 2 final notes, and then maybe I'll just let everyone chime in if there's anything else to add here, because I think we're just about on time. But Louise makes, again, a great point about we need to have people bridging and not just have people from down south up to, tell different people in communities how to live lives. It's really about the local knowledge. That's so important. And then Lori Parker from Parks Canada says there is some funding available via Parks and the Wood Buffalo National Park Action Plan for groups in that area, also for things like equipment, training positions, etc., to support collaborative work. It's not tied to an application process or a deadline, but more of an ongoing conversation. So Lori, maybe we can connect with you, and I think this is just the start, hopefully, or the continuation of some really good connections and collaborations to move this work forward. So unless there are any other burning questions that people want to put into the chat, I'll pass
Francis, there was one more question that I accidentally
thank
dismissed.
you. Thank you, Claudia.
So it was from Maya. She said, thank you for this lovely panel. Please forgive the somewhat basic nature of my question, but do you believe there should be any limits on the amount of environmental data we collect? And if so, what should those limits be? That was a good question, so I'll throw it back at all of you.
I saw that one and I'm glad you caught it, so thank you. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously sacred areas or protected areas are definitely a no-go. I don't think setting up the cameras and the ARUs is very intrusive of the environment, and it doesn't have a huge impact doing the setup unless you're doing it at a time of calving or like you can't be in there when whooping cranes are nesting. You know what I mean? That's intrusive. So you got to time these properly around the environment and the species you're looking for. So yeah, just having respect for the environment and the indigenous people and their sacred locations, and making sure you don't you're not invasive to that species.
I think there should be a limit on how data is collected, not a limit on how much. I know there's some project tactics that the Indigenous people don't agree with. I think that one of them might be how some of the caribou data is collected. They would like to revisit those tactics and change them. So there is a lot of it is more the limit on how the data is being collected, and that's where the Indigenous people would like it stepped in. To how much, I don't, from what I'm hearing from any elders or harvesters, the more we have, the better. But like I said, they're just emphasizing on how it's collected. They don't want helicopters constantly flying around. They don't want planes constantly doing passes or ATVs and Argos going in there to test something. And I think that's why the Indigenous people or the Dene people in my community just love these cameras and monitors. It's just, they sit out there for so many months without somebody, there's no trail created by a consistent use where these things are being deployed. So there's little to no damage during the collection of this. So they always said the more you can get, the better, because things are changing so fast. They need the future to understand what's happening, bringing their Dene laws and protocols involved. The only limit to how much I would say is if you were ever getting past where you were kind of getting into a Dene spiritual side of things about how the animals work together and everything like that. That I think that would be the only limit, would be a cultural side. But I think the only limit is to how it's being collected.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Jessica, those were some really great words. Because the cameras and ARUs can be placed out there, yeah, you don't have to feed them, so they become relatively inexpensive. But the other really great thing is because there's not a person standing there, wildlife or birds come right up close, and they're, you can kind of capture them non-invasively doing what they do. And so it allows us to monitor or see them in a way that we probably wouldn't be able to, especially with those maybe more of the rare species or species at risk or elusive species. We have a greater chance of actually capturing those species by using this method or these tools. It's really wonderful.
Maybe just for me, just talking about, let's say, my mandate as me as an individual as part of this collaboration, which is to monitor distribution abundance of forest birds. Like, there's so many current gaps right now in our knowledge and understanding that we haven't given that much thought about how many. But I think what Jessica mentioned about, as long as it's being done in a respectful way, and that there's the support of all partners, because there's so many different types of data being collected with these two sensors alone. But yeah, Maya, definitely not a naive question, and that was an interesting curveball.
Great points. I'll just add in there quickly as well, being meeting with my students multiple times a week who are processing all the data across a couple projects. How much in terms of the number of photos you get can be a huge bottleneck when it comes to processing time, right? So there's the considerations there too, but of course, so many questions that they can all be used for that. Hopefully in the long run, it's very efficient and worth it anyway. I just noted one last question that I had from the chat as well. Thanks for reminding me, Claudia. Very simple. What brand of cameras are you using? We'll throw it to you first, Jessica.
I don't remember the
That's
brand
okay.
of camera. Yeah, that's I was just gonna refer that to one of you guys. I was like, we just deploy them as fast as we can.
Yeah, so Brad was able to provide that, and I think I put it in the link. It's a Reconyx brand. We found when we first started, they're Hyperfire, they're the latest version of the Hyperfire. When we were looking at what cameras to use, it was the only camera that was rated to -40, which, as many of you will recognize, is probably not even cold enough in some parts of the territory. But we have had a few photos that have taken at -44. So they are working at lower temperatures, and they're still not completely shutting down at those temperatures. They're kind of going to sleep and they come back. So we've had a few issues with battery drainage with the high flash, but the Reconyx professional line of cameras, which you can buy, we found everyone that we've talked to that works in like circumpolarly in Canada, that's what they generally use because of them being so cold sensitive. Yeah, having said that, John said he's looking into other models, and I know there are folks at the North Slave Métis Alliance, and they're using different brands too. They tried some with solar panels, not too successful, unfortunately. There's also cameras that are now, if you're in a place where there's cell reception, they'll send photos back immediately. But again, a lot of these aren't rugged enough for the North, unfortunately. Yeah.
I was just going to say that's my experience as well. And just to note, there are a couple studies going on comparing different brands in cold weather. So hopefully we'll have those data out, and Dave, maybe you have stuff to add to that too. But it's a great question and something that we're thinking about. So.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in that ABMI really uses Reconyx cameras as well. And we've also been involved in some studies looking at side-by-side comparisons of not only their ability to work in different temperatures, but their detectability and what they're actually able to detect moving in front of them, and how for different sizes of mammals and distances from the camera, how that affects everything as well. And I would just also mention too, one of the important things to know, it's not only the type of camera, but it's also the type of batteries and SD cards that you use to be able to make it work in those cold temperatures as well. So lithium batteries, they just seem to be the way to go for those cold weather cameras.
Oh, shit.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for answering and taking part in that question and answer period. We have one more question. Maybe I'll just ask it very quickly. Due to the warm weather in May, would ECCC retrieve the cameras during fire season?
Ooh.
Sam.
Yeah, no, so the fire season, it's literally, there's a safety hazard. So obviously it's just material at the end of the day, and we're just gonna wait for the fire to pass, and then we would go and retrieve what is salvageable. And worst comes to worst, it's a marathon, so we start all over again 2 years after. But we do definitely have some interest in actually doing a lot of work right after the fire, and ideally getting good baseline before the fire, so to better understand how wildlife are actually responding to fire. So that's definitely a hot topic of interest for a lot of communities as well. So I think it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Okay,
Well,
yeah,
are we done there?
Yep.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Dave. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Francis, for taking us through, and for all of everyone providing those answers and awesome questions as well. I hope that everyone's found a lot of value in this. I know I have. And I just wanted to just finish off again, just showing the last two slides again, that we really appreciate this work relies on the knowledge shared by elders and knowledge keepers. So we'd really, if you've joined us today, we'd really like to acknowledge with a small gift. So if you can get in touch with Claudia at this email address right there, She's waving her hand. And then if you're interested in staying in touch about this as well and finding out about future training, information, or webinars, or what's happening, please get in touch with Danielle or Sam or any of the panelists, and we'll try to, we'll all condense everything and be able to get back to everyone there as well. And so thank you so much for joining us here today again. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much for hosting, David. Did a great job.
That was really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Must see everybody.
Maybe the panelists can stay on for a few seconds.
For sure.
Just continuing after lunch.
Oh, sorry, say it again, Earl?
Is this continuing at 1 o'clock?
Nope, we're done right now. Oh,
We're finished.
sorry, I'm gonna mute myself.
So are we still live now, or?